"Don't embarrass me again," he snapped. And before I could even process what he meant, his hand hit my face. The sound wasn't loud, but it was sharp enough to cut through the music, the laughter, the fake smiles. Everything stopped. My sister froze mid-laugh, her champagne glass still raised. A few guests turned. Most didn't. Or maybe they pretended not to. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there, my cheek burning, my ears ringing, and slowly lifted my hand to my face. And then, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because in that exact moment, I knew something he didn't. My name is Rachel Turner. I'm 34 years old. And if you saw me that night standing in a soft gold dress at my sister's engagement party, you'd probably think I had a decent life. Stable. Quiet. Maybe even happy. I worked as an event coordinator. Nothing glamorous, but enough to pay my bills, keep things running, and honestly, I was good at it. I knew how to manage chaos, how to keep things smooth, how to fix problems before anyone else even noticed them. But what I couldn't fix was my own life. I wasn't the favorite in my family. That role had always belonged to my younger sister, Emily, the one they always praised, the one who never seemed to make mistakes. Emily had the perfect smile, the perfect job, and now, the perfect engagement. Me. I was the one who kept things together behind the scenes. The one who adjusted. The one who stayed quiet. Even in my marriage. My husband, Daniel, wasn't always like this. Or maybe, I just didn't want to see it before. First he was charming. Confident. Proactive. But slowly, over time, that protection turned into control. Small comments. "You're too sensitive. You always overreact. Why can't you just be normal for once?" First I brushed it off. Told myself every marriage had rough edges. Then came the silences. The cold shoulders. The way he'd make me feel like I was the problem, even when I knew I wasn't. And still I stayed. Because walking away felt harder than staying quiet. Because I thought maybe, if I just tried a little more, things would get better. That night, I stopped believing that. Because it wasn't just private anymore. It wasn't behind closed doors. It was in front of everyone. And the worst part? No one stopped him. No one said anything. Not my parents. Not my sister. Not even the people who saw it clearly. Instead, my mother walked up to me, her voice low but sharp. "Rachel, go freshen up. Don't make a scene. Don't make a scene." Like I was the one who had done something wrong. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw it clearly. This wasn't new. They had always chosen comfort over truth. Image over reality. And I had always made it easy for them. If you've ever stayed silent just to keep the peace, I see you. If you've ever been made to feel like your reaction was the problem, not what was done to you, you're not alone. Subscribe and tell me, have you ever held everything in, until one moment changed everything? Because sometimes, silence isn't weakness. Sometimes, it's timing. And trust me, that night, my silence wasn't surrender. It was the beginning of something they never saw coming. I walked toward the restroom slowly, every step steady, controlled. Inside, the noise of the party faded into a distant blur. I stared at myself in the mirror. My cheek was already turning red. My eyes weren't filled with tears. That surprised me, because I used to cry easily. Used to feel everything all at once. But not anymore. Well, I felt something else. Clarity. I splashed some water on my face, took a deep breath, and adjusted my dress like nothing had happened. Because that's what they expected, right? For me to fix it. To smooth it over. To pretend. But as I stepped out of that restroom, I noticed something. Something small. Something most people wouldn't even think about. The CCTV camera. Mounted right above the main hall. Facing the exact spot where everything had happened. Suddenly, that moment replayed in my head, but differently. Not as something humiliating, but as something recorded. Untouchable. Truth. And that's when a quiet thought crossed my mind. Not emotional. Not reactive. Just calm. Good. I walked back into the party. Music was playing again. People were laughing again. Like nothing had happened. Daniel was standing near the bar, already relaxed, talking to a group of guests like he hadn't just crossed a line you don't come back from. He glanced at me for a second. Just a second. And I saw it. That confidence. That certainty. He thought it was over. He thought I'd stay quiet. He thought I'd protect him, like I always had. I walked past him without saying a word. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel scared. So, and when you're truly still, you start seeing everything clearly. I noticed how my sister avoided looking at me. How my father kept talking loudly to distract others. How a few guests whispered behind their hands. Everyone knew something had happened. But no one wanted to deal with it. Because dealing with it would make it real. And reality is uncomfortable. Especially for people who live their lives pretending everything is perfect. I picked up a glass of water and stood quietly near the edge of the room. Watching. Listening. Learning. Because here's the truth no one tells you. When people think you're weak, they stop hiding who they really are. And that night, they showed me everything. And I let them. Because I wasn't there to react anymore. I was there. To remember. I stayed in that room. Not as a guest anymore. But as someone watching a story unfold. One that everyone thought was already finished. Only it wasn't. Not even close. The music picked up again, louder this time, like the DJ was trying to erase what had just happened. People returned to their conversations. Laughter came back, but it felt different now. Forced. Careful. And Daniel? He slipped right back into his role like nothing had happened. Charming. Easygoing. Smiling. Another round? He asked a group near the bar, raising his glass like he hadn't just slapped his wife 10 minutes ago. Someone laughed. Someone agreed. And just like that, the moment disappeared. At least for them. I moved slowly through the room, keeping my posture straight, my expression neutral. Inside something had shifted. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was observing. And the more I observed, the more I started to see things I had ignored for years. First betrayal, exclusion. When it was time for family photos, I wasn't called. Not even once. I stood just a few feet away as the photographer arranged everyone. Closer, closer. Perfect, he said. Emily stood glowing in the center, her fiancé beside her, my parents on either side. Daniel joined them. Of course he did. Like he belonged there more than I did. I waited. Just for a second. Maybe someone would notice. Maybe someone would say, "Rachel, come here." But no one did. Instead, my mother adjusted Emily's hair and smiled at the camera. Flash. Perfect family. Without me. I felt it, that old familiar sting. But this time, I didn't let it sink in. I just nodded to myself slightly. Noted. Second betrayal. The story they told about me. As I passed by a group of guests, I heard Daniel's voice again. Light. Casual. Controlled. Yeah, she just gets emotional sometimes, he said with a small laugh. You know how it is. Weddings, family pressure. It's a lot. Someone asked, was everything okay earlier? And he shrugged. Yeah. Just a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. That's what he called it. Not a slap. Not humiliation. Just something small. Something forgettable. And the worst part? People nodded. They accepted it. Because it was easier than questioning him. Easier than seeing the truth. I stopped just out of sight, listening. Waiting to feel anger. Then said, I felt something colder. Distance. Like I was stepping outside of the situation completely. Like I was finally seeing him for who he really was. Not who I hoped he could be. Third betrayal, manipulation. Rachel. I turned. Emily stood behind me, her smile tight. Perfect, but strained. Can we talk? She asked. I followed her to a quieter corner. She crossed her arms, lowering her voice. What was that earlier? I blinked at her. You mean when your future brother-in-law slapped me? She exhaled sharply. Don't say it like that. I stared at her. How should I say it? She hesitated, then leaned closer. Look, tonight is really important to me. I need everything to go smoothly. I let that sink in. You think I'm the one making it not smooth? I'm saying, she replied carefully, you know how Daniel gets. You could have handled that better. Actually laughed. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just quietly. Because in that moment, everything became so clear. You're asking me to manage him, I said. I'm asking you not to ruin this night. There was not concern. Not support. Just image. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I didn't see my sister. I saw someone who needed everything to look perfect, no matter the cost. Even if that cost was me. I'm not ruining anything, I said calmly. And I meant it. Because I wasn't. I wasn't raising my voice. I wasn't causing a scene. I wasn't even defending myself. I was just watching. Emily studied me for a moment, like she was trying to figure out why I wasn't reacting the way she expected. Then she nodded slowly. Good, she said. Let's just keep it that way. And she walked away. Just like that. I stood there for a second. Not hurt. Not angry. Just certain. Because every word, every action, every choice they made that night. They were building something. A version of the truth. A story where I was the problem. Where Daniel was reasonable. Where everything stayed clean and untouched. And they thought that story would hold. But here's the thing they didn't understand. Stories only work when there's no evidence. And as I looked around that room again, at the decorations I helped plan, at the layout I understood better than anyone, at the small, unnoticed systems running quietly in the background, I remembered something important. Something they didn't know. I had been in charge of coordinating this venue. Not officially, but I had stepped in days earlier when their planner got overwhelmed. Checked the lighting, the sound, the cameras. Especially the cameras. Because in my line of work, you don't just trust that things are working. You verify. Suddenly, every moment from earlier replayed in my mind again. But this time not emotionally. Technically. Bagels. Coverage. Timing. The slap. Daniel's position. The people around us. The exact spot under that camera. And then something else surfaced. Something small. Something I almost ignored earlier. But now, it mattered. A lot. Because the slap wasn't the only thing that happened in that area. And if the system had recorded everything the way I knew it would, then that night didn't just hold my humiliation. It held his truth. I exhaled slowly. And for the first time that evening, I felt a quiet sense of control. Not loud. Not obvious. But steady. Across the room, Daniel laughed again, raising his glass like he had already won. Like the story was finished. Like I was exactly where he wanted me. Silent. Contained. Invisible. I tilted my head slightly watching him. And in my mind one simple thought formed. Go ahead. Keep talking. Keep pretending. Because the more comfortable he felt, the more he revealed. And I wasn't done watching yet. Not even close. I didn't move for a while after Emily walked away. I just stood there letting the noise of the party settle into the background again. Like static. Because now everything felt different. Not louder. Not heavier. Just clearer. There's a strange moment that happens when you finally stop reacting. It's like stepping outside your own life and watching it from a distance. You notice things you used to miss. Details. Patterns. Truth. And that night, I started seeing everything. I picked up another glass of water. Not because I needed it, but because it gave me a reason to stand still without drawing attention. And from that stillness, I watched. Daniel had moved closer to the lounge area now, where a smaller group had gathered. He looked relaxed. Too relaxed. The kind of relaxed that only comes when someone is completely sure they've gotten away with something. I watched the way he leaned in when he talked. The way he lowered his voice just enough to feel private, but not enough to be invisible. And then, I saw her. A woman in a deep red dress. I didn't recognize her immediately, but something about the way she stood close to him, too close, caught my attention. He said something. She laughed. Not politely. Not casually. Comfortably. Like this wasn't new. I felt that familiar sting again, but it didn't take over this time. As now. I wasn't just feeling. I was connecting. What they didn't know was, I had already started noticing things weeks ago. Small things at first. Daniel coming home later than usual. His phone always face down. Calls he'd take in another room. And every time I asked, he had an answer ready. Smooth. Confident. Dismissive. You're overthinking. It's just work. Why are you always suspicious? And eventually, I stopped asking. Not because I believed him, but because I realized something more important. People who lie. Repeat patterns. And patterns can be tracked. That's something my mentor used to tell me. Rachel, she'd say, never react to the first thing you see. Wait. Observe. Let the full picture reveal itself. At the time she meant it for work. For managing events. For solving problems. But I guess it applies to people too. So I started paying attention. Quietly. Without confrontation. Without drama. I noticed dates. Timing. excuses that didn't quite line up, and I stored all of it. Not as accusations, but as information. And now, standing in that room, watching him with that woman, everything started lining up. I shifted slightly, moving closer, but not enough to be obvious. Just enough to hear. Just enough to confirm. "You're terrible," the woman in red said with a smile. Daniel chuckled. "Only when I want to be." She nudged him lightly. "And your wife?" He rolled his eyes. "She'll be fine." That was it. No hesitation. No guilt. Just a dismissal. I looked at them for a second longer. Then I looked up. Right above them. The same camera. Different angle. Same coverage. Suddenly, everything inside me went still again. Because it wasn't just about what I felt anymore. It wasn't about what I knew. It was about what could be proven. I had a plan they never saw coming. The thought didn't feel dramatic. It didn't feel emotional. It felt practical. I stepped away before they noticed me. No confrontation. No scene. Not yet. Because the truth doesn't need to be loud. When it's complete. I walked toward the side corridor where the staff area was located. Not fast. Not slow. Just steady. Like I belonged there. Because in a way, I did. The staff recognized me. Of course they did. I had been coordinating things just days ago. Fixing schedules. Checking details. Making sure everything ran smoothly. I gave a small nod to one of the technicians. He nodded back. No questions. No suspicion. That's the advantage of being invisible. People don't stop you. They don't question you. They assume you're supposed to be there. I stepped into the control room. The hum of equipment filled the space. Monitors lined the wall, each showing a different angle of the venue. Main hall. Entrance. Lounge area. Stage. Everything. And there was. The exact spot. Frozen in time, but still recording. I walked closer. Not touching anything yet. Just looking. Understanding. Confirming. Because this wasn't about rushing. This was about precision. The technician glanced at me. "Everything okay?" he asked. I gave a small, calm smile. "Yeah. Just wanted to make sure all the feeds are running properly." He nodded. "They are." "I figured," I said lightly. "Just double-checking." He didn't question it. Why would he? That's what I did. I double-checked things. I looked at the screen again. And this time, I didn't see chaos. I saw structure. Timeline. Sequence. Evidence. The slap. Captured. Clear. Undeniable. Daniel and the woman in red. Captured. Close. Contextual. The conversations. The positioning. The way everything connected. It was all there. Not pieces. Not fragments. A full picture. And that's when I realized something even more important. I didn't need to argue with anyone. I didn't need to convince anyone. I didn't need to defend myself. Because when truth is visible, it speaks for itself. I stepped back from the monitor slowly. My heartbeat was steady. My breathing calm. This wasn't revenge. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like balance. I thanked the technician softly and walked out of the room. Back into the hallway. Back toward the noise. Back toward the people who thought the story was already over. But no. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was ready. And the only thing left was timing. I stepped back into the party like nothing had changed. Because on the outside, nothing had. The music was still playing. Glasses still clinked. People still smiled like everything was perfect. But for me, everything had shifted. There's a moment when you stop feeling like you're inside the storm. And realize you're standing just outside it. Watching. Waiting. Choosing when to step back in. And that's exactly where I was now. I moved through the crowd slowly, blending in again. No one stopped me. No one asked if I was okay. And honestly, that told me everything I needed to know. Daniel was still near the lounge area. Still laughing. Still playing the same role. But now I saw it clearly. It wasn't confidence. It was carelessness. Because people who think they've already won. Stop being careful. I watched as he checked his phone quickly, then slipped it back into his pocket. A small thing. But I noticed it. Because now, I noticed everything. And then I saw her again. The woman in red. She leaned in close, whispering something into his ear. He smirked. Not the kind of smile you give a stranger. The kind you give someone you're comfortable with. Someone you've done this with before. I didn't feel jealous. That part of me was already gone. What I felt instead was confirmation. I turned away, walking toward the stage area where the engagement speeches would happen soon. The screen behind it was already set up. A slideshow of Emily and her fiancé played softly. Childhood photos, vacations, carefully chosen moments. A perfect story. Edited. Controlled. Beautiful. But I knew something about screens. About stories. About what happens when the wrong clip plays at the right time. I stood near the side of the stage watching the technician adjust a few cables. The same technician from earlier. He glanced at me and gave a polite nod. "Everything still good?" he asked. "Yeah," I said softly. "Actually, I might need a small favor later." He tilted his head slightly. "What kind?" "Just switching a feed for a moment," I replied. "Nothing complicated." He hesitated for a second, then shrugged. "As long as it doesn't mess up the main schedule." "It won't," I said calmly, because I already knew exactly when it wouldn't. Timing. That was everything. I stepped back again, letting the moment pass. Because this wasn't something I wanted to rush. This wasn't something I wanted to do out of anger. This had to be precise. Across the room I saw my mentor's words playing out in real time. Don't react too early. Let people reveal themselves fully. Then act, once. And that's what I was doing. I spotted someone else then. Someone I hadn't noticed earlier. A familiar face. A senior event director I had worked under for years. The one who taught me everything I knew about staying calm under pressure. About reading situations. About never letting emotions ruin strategy. She wasn't officially part of the event tonight, but Emily had invited her, probably just to add more impressive guests to the list. Maya caught my eye from across the room. Her expression shifted instantly. She had seen enough. Maybe not everything, but enough. She walked over to me, her steps measured, her voice low. "Rachel," she said, scanning my face. "Are you okay?" I held her gaze for a moment. Then I nodded slightly. "I will be." That answer made her pause. Because it wasn't what people usually say. Her eyes narrowed just a little. Not in concern. In understanding. "What are you thinking?" she asked quietly. I gave a small, controlled smile. "Just making sure everything runs smoothly." She almost smiled at that. Almost. Because she knew me. And she knew what that really meant. "Do you need help?" she asked. I considered it for a second. Then shook my head gently. "Not yet." She studied me for another moment. Then nodded. "All right," she said. "But whatever you're about to do, make sure it's clean." Clean. That was her word. Always. "I will," I said. And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. Not emotionally. Not mentally. Because sometimes, you don't need someone to step in. You just need someone who understands what you're about to do. Across the room the energy shifted again. The host stepped forward, tapping the microphone. "All right everyone," he said cheerfully, "let's gather around for the engagement toast." Perfect. People began moving toward the stage. Chairs turned. Glasses refilled. Attention redirected. Daniel moved with the crowd, slipping easily into place beside my parents. Emily stood at the center, glowing again, her smile back in place. Like nothing had ever happened. Like everything was still under control. I stayed near the edge for a moment longer. Watching. Counting. This was it. The moment where everything comes together. Where the story they built meets the truth they tried to hide. I walked toward the technician again. "Calm. Steady. Invisible. Ready?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "Just tell me when." I glanced toward the stage. The microphone was being handed to my father now. He cleared his throat, smiling proudly. "Tonight," he began, "is about love, family, and new beginnings." I exhaled slowly. And for the first time that night, I stepped fully back into the storm. "Now," I said softly. "Now." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Because everything that mattered was already in motion. My father's voice continued through the microphone, warm and confident. A celebration of trust, of unity, of everything a family should be. And then, the screen behind him flickered. Just for a second. A small glitch. Most people didn't even notice. But I did. Because I was waiting for it. The slideshow froze. Emily's smiling face paused mid-frame. And then, It disappeared. The screen went black. A quiet ripple moved through the crowd. Confusion. Whispers. A few people shifted in their seats. Just a small technical issue, my father said quickly, chuckling into the mic. Give us a moment. But the moment didn't come. The screen lit up again. Not with curated memories. Not with perfect photos. But with reality. The first clip started. Clear, steady, unedited. There I was. Standing in that same hall. Same dress. Same moment. And then, Daniel's hand. The movement. The impact. The sound didn't play loudly. But it didn't need to. Because everyone saw it. The room went silent. Not polite silence. Not social silence. Real silence. The kind that presses into your chest. My father's voice disappeared mid-sentence. The microphone lowered slowly in his hand. Emily turned toward the screen. Her smile vanished. Daniel. He froze. For the first time that night. He didn't look confident. What the hell? He muttered under his breath. The clip ended. But before anyone could react, the next one began. Different angle. Different moment. Same truth. Daniel. In the lounge area. Leaning close to the woman in red. Smiling in a way I hadn't seen in a long time. The crowd shifted again. Not confusion this time. Recognition. And then, the third clip. His voice. Clear enough now. She'll be fine. A few gasps broke through the silence. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." And just like that, the story changed. No explanation. No defense. No narrative to twist. Just truth. Daniel stepped forward suddenly. "Turn that off," he snapped, his voice sharp, panicked. But it didn't turn off. Because this wasn't his moment anymore. This was mine. I walked forward slowly. Not rushing. Not dramatic. Just certain. Every step felt steady. Grounded. I stepped beside the stage. Not taking the spotlight. Just standing where I could be seen. Daniel looked at me then. Really looked at me. And for the first time in years, I saw something new in his eyes. Fear. "Rachel, what is this?" he demanded, his voice tight. "What are you doing?" I tilted my head slightly. Composed. "I'm not doing anything," I said. I gestured lightly toward the screen. "I'm just letting everyone see." He shook his head quickly. "This is taken out of context." I held his gaze. "Then explain it." Silence. Not from the room. From him. Because there was no explanation. Not one that would fix what everyone had already seen. Emily stepped forward slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Rachel, why would you do this? Tonight of all nights." I turned to her. And for the first time that evening, I felt something close to emotion. Not anger. Not sadness. Clarity. "I didn't do this to your night," I said quietly. "I showed what actually happened in it." Her lips parted slightly. But no words came out. As deep down, he knew. My mother stepped in next, her voice sharp with urgency. "Rachel, this is not the way to handle things." I looked at her. Really looked at her. "And what is?" I asked calmly. "Pretending it didn't happen?" She hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. Because that hesitation said everything. Around us, the room had shifted completely. People weren't whispering anymore. They were watching. Listening. Understanding. The same people who had looked away earlier were now looking directly at the truth. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his composure slipping. "This is insane," he said. "You're trying to humiliate me." I almost smiled. Not out of cruelty, but out of irony. "I didn't have to try," I said softly. The words landed. Heavy. Final. Because they were true. He took a step toward me. Then stopped. Because now, he wasn't the one in control. No one interrupted. No one defended him. And that silence, it wasn't the same silence as before. It protected him. Well, it exposed him. I looked around the room one last time. At the faces. At the shift. At the reality settling in. And then I said the only thing that mattered. "You didn't break me," I said, my voice steady. I met his eyes. Held them. "You exposed yourself." And just like that, there was nothing left to say. For a few seconds after I said it, no one moved. No one spoke. It was like the entire room had forgotten how to breathe. And then, everything shifted. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, in the way people started looking at him differently. The same people who had laughed with him earlier. Stepped back. Just a little. Enough to create distance. Enough to show something had changed. Daniel noticed it. Of course he did. People like him always notice when control slips. This isn't what it looks like, he said quickly, his voice no longer steady. But it didn't carry the same weight anymore. As now, everyone had already seen what it looked like. No one responded. No one agreed. And that silence, it wasn't protecting him anymore. It was judging him. Emily stood frozen near the stage. Her perfect night was no longer perfect. Not because I ruined it, but because reality finally showed up. She looked at me again. Different this time. Not frustrated. Not controlled. Rachel, she said softly, you could have handled this privately. I held her gaze. And this time I didn't soften my words. I did, I said. For years. That hit her. You could see it. Not fully. But enough. Because somewhere deep down, she knew I was right. My father slowly set the microphone down. He didn't say anything. Didn't try to fix it. Didn't try to control the situation anymore. Because this wasn't something that could be smoothed over. Not with words. Not with smiles. Not with pretending. My mother crossed her arms tightly, her expression shifting between anger and discomfort. But even she didn't step forward again. Because what could she say now? The truth had already spoken. Daniel exhaled sharply, looking around the room like he was searching for support. For someone to step in. To defend him. To restore his version of the story. But no one did. And that was the moment it truly ended. Not when the video played. Not when I spoke. But when he realized. He was alone in it. I didn't stay to watch him fall apart. I didn't need to. Because this was never about destroying him. It was about freeing myself. I turned away from the stage. No rush. No hesitation. Just done. As I walked toward the exit, I could feel eyes on me. Not judging. Not whispering. Watching. Understanding. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small under those eyes. I felt seen. The night air hit my face as I stepped outside. Cool. Quiet. Cool. I took a deep breath. And it felt different. Lighter. Like something I had been carrying for years. Had finally been set down. I didn't cry. I didn't break. Because I wasn't losing anything. I was leaving something behind. Behind me, through the glass doors, I could still see movement. People talking. Shifting. Processing. But I didn't turn back. Because some chapters don't need revisiting. I walked down the steps slowly, my heels clicking softly against the ground. Step steady. Intentional. Right. And as I reached the end of those steps, one thought settled clearly in my mind. Respect isn't something you beg for. Something you protect. Even if that means walking away from the people who should have given it to you in the first place. I got into my car, closed the door, and sat there for a second. Just breathing. Just being. No noise. No pressure. No pretending. And for the first time in years, I felt in control of my own life. Not because everything was perfect, but because I finally chose myself. If you've ever been humiliated in public by someone who was supposed to protect you, you know how deep that pain goes. Tell me your story in the comments. I'm listening. Subscribe if you believe silence isn't surrender. It's strategy. You deserve respect. Always. Click hype to help this story reach someone who needs that reminder. Your story has power. If you felt a connection to mine, please subscribe and share your journey in the comments. Every hype helps someone else feel less alone. Thank you for being here. And for listening.